in that ideally the club has its own identity, and then the coach brings his or her own kind of identity and ideas as well, and then it's it's a balance between the two, just as like when the players look to play within a team structure, it's a balance between what the player brings, and what the team requires. um, so yeah, which is always reminds me of what you've mentioned, Al, about the tension between the social and the team, or the social rather than the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. You just set me to thinking about so the reason why Dave Snowden chose Cynefin to name that framework by is the word in Welsh means the place of my multiple belongings.
Yeah.
And I really like that notion that one of the levels of complexity that we need to get comfortable with is the complexities that sit within ourselves. That we are multiple things at multiple times in multiple ways. And I think that's something that a lot of people, particularly in today's society, struggle with, is that your identity might not be that easily definable to others.
Yeah.
Mm. It also raises, Jimmy, actually a conversation with Al, but a couple of times recently around this idea of the club's identity or the club's philosophy and the coach's identity and philosophy, and where the balance is there. And I've heard some good stories lately about a club or a sports governing body, by not being too prescriptive about how they want their coaches to coach, getting some really good engagement then by, again, the principle of giving them some autonomy, if you like, or allowing them some autonomy within a broad framework or principles, really engages them. And then the next positive spin-off, it seems, is then they get prepared to engage with other coaches as well in terms of discussing how I go about it. Here's what might have worked, might not have worked. So you start to create that dialogue that is probably really important in terms of that sort of ongoing learning and a culture of learning.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. So I think the club having a strong identity is key, but recognizing that identity is basically a sum of all the individual identities that make up the club as well, which is, obviously the fans, the people that work within the club, and the coaches massively, and that, as we say, it's always going to be shaped and reshaped, and be changing, and it should be. Because if it's static, then it's not. It's not growing and developing and improving. But I suppose with that in mind, there's always going to be fundamentals that they want to hold on to as well.
Yeah.
But again, I suppose it's that balance that that with everything, there's a tension between going, well, this is our tradition.
Yeah.
And this is who we are. I think it's really nice for people to have that certainty, but then also going, but we change and we're organic and we grow. I think it's really interesting. Like, as I'm learning more about the Catalan culture, there's one of the things that they say about the city of Barcelona, and I picked this up through my walking tours, is that the city itself is a fierce example of extremes. Because the Catalan culture is, in a lot of senses, very traditional, very collective, very much about equality. But then, like the kind of, it's also about it's fierce on independence as well, which then is like when you get like the expressions of self and creativity, and bits and pieces like that. So there's a recognition here that there are two sides, and there's a recognition as well that, like, even within the Catalan culture, they talk about the value of natural wisdom and that things being organic and growing and taking time. But then they have this idea of like freedom from this, what they call natural wisdom, being like this ability to be a little bit crazy and a little bit like and defy social norms, and they recognize you need a release, so you can't go around being this saint all the time. You have to have a release from that. So they have these spectrums, and I think the fact that they're allowing and they recognize these spectrums, for me, it can be thought of as having like an allowance of disequilibrium. And it's in that disequilibrium that you can get that creative expression. So they have, for example, here they have this guy called Al-Kaganer. Al-Kaganer basically means the shitter. Okay, and it's a little doll like this. It's a little man, and it's a Catalan farmer who's pulling his pants down and doing a poo. And okay, and he's like, for me, he's a great example of the two sides of the Catalan culture, because the farm is iconic in their heritage, and giving back to the land is something that's really important. So they say shit is a great fertilizer. It's the farmer's friend, and it is the emblem of root and place. Okay, this is legit. So like, they have in this one symbol, there you go, you have like the recognition of farm and that ancestral heritage. But on the other side, you have someone defying social norms by pretty much pooing in your face. So you have like the collectivism and you have the release all in this one symbol. And this guy comes out at Christmas. He's in the nativity. So you got little baby Jesus and the wise men and the shepherds. And then you have El Kaganer, who's like doing a poo, but it's not inside the stable, obviously. He's outside the stable, giving back to the land. Yeah, it's brilliant, I know. And then you also have this other thing at Christmas called Shit Uncle, which is Kagati. And the Kagati just means shit uncle. And he's basically this little log that lives inside the house. And the kids leave him like beer or cake or tequila, whatever the parents want. In the evening, the kids go to bed. When they come back in the morning, Kagati's got bigger. Okay, and this happens all the way until Christmas. And then at Christmas, the parents get Kagati and they string him up like a piñata. Okay, and the kids come down with bats and they literally beat the sweets out of Kagati, and the sweets everywhere. And this is like, to me, is a great example of like the extremes and the craziness, but like it's accepted as well, and it's part of it. And I think the tradition and the self-expression and the craziness is how you get things like La Sagrada Familia as well. It's tradition in the way that's a church, but it's self-expression and craziness, and it's an expression of Gaudi and what he believed and who he is. And he is essentially one of the greatest examples of Catalan, and he draws a lot of inspiration from the land and have an ecological metaphor that underpins architecture. So yeah, it's super interesting.